And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is writer, director, and producer Dutch Marich, who is the mad mind behind the horrifying Horror in the High Desert series, which currently has 2 installments that are out now on VOD. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to talk spooky.
Yes, I'm very excited too. And so let's start with Horror in the High Desert. What are these 2 movies about? If you could distill them for our listeners that might not have seen them.
Sure. So the first one is about an experienced outdoorsman who has like a pretty popular YouTube channel, and he discovers on one of his excursions this spooky thing out in the desert, and on his return to document it and show it to his subscribers, he vanishes. Obviously we see what happens when he vanished at the end of the movie. It's the first in 5 in a series of 5 films.
5,
so
all right.
Yeah, so part 2 is in the same universe, in the same like part of the high desert, and it kind of follows 2 different stories. One is a woman who is like mysteriously found dead, and another disappearance. So it's kind of like building on the lore of what is going on in the first movie and setting up kind of the rest of the series.
Hell yeah. So by the end of the first one, you kind of introduced this I think they were social media influencers that we're going to descend on. And then you did a swerve with the second one, because I thought, because I recently watched the first one and then I watched the second one. I was like, that's what the second one's going to be about. No, it's a swerve. Was that always your plan to do a swerve, or was it just how timing worked out?
So it actually was not. A lot of the first reactions from people were not like negative, but they were totally expecting the setup from the first one, which is, the people setting out to find what Gary found. And then when they saw this one, we're just kind of thrown for a curveball. But to be totally honest, the reason that part 2 kind of took that route is because I had to have back surgery.
Oh.
And I didn't know that while I was doing the first one and setting it up. But I wanted to make a movie still, to like keep it going. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what can I do that's like still in this universe, because to film there, it's a 9-hour drive.
Oof.
And with a busted back, that is like I would be literally like crippled by the time I got there.
Oh my God.
And my doctor was like, up until your surgery, do not do any traveling where you're sitting for long periods of time. Half of that is actually shot in the Angeles National Forest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Like really close to my home here in LA. It's like 45 minutes up the hill. Actually, not half of it, but the beginning of the filming process started there and then kind of finished in Nevada.
Oh, wow. Cool. I never would have clocked that. I guessed that at all. That's so cool. Is your back okay? How are you doing now?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. I've got my orthopedic pillow.
Got nice inserts in your shoes now.
Oh my God. In San Francisco, for UFF, I forgot them, to be honest.
No.
This is the oldest conversation I've ever had.
Not the inserts.
I feel so old.
No, they're important.
I literally had to go to Rite Aid because I was like, bitch, I can't fucking do this anymore. I'm like dying here. But I'm all good now. My back's
sometimes,
good.
I tell you.
Oh my God. But okay, so this is a found footage series, which we all know that we all love. And so why found footage? Why did you want to go this route with this series and these films?
So I love the show Disappeared.
Oh,
Have you guys ever seen it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
It's on the Investigation Discovery Network.
Okay.
They're kind of like Datelines. It's a docuseries. And every episode profiles someone that has disappeared without a trace.
Okay.
They suck you in, these episodes. And I always thought, like, how frightening would it be for one of these episodes, or like a Dateline even, if at the end we see what happened to the person?
Fuck that.
I'm looking up disappeared on Wikipedia, and I was like, oh, so this is sort of like when I was growing up. Like, for me, it would have been Unsolved Mysteries. That sort of like,
yes,
they do those creepy things, and they do reenactments and all that kind of stuff. By the end of the episode, if you are an impressionable youth, you're like, what the fuck? The world is trying to murder me.
Yes. Completely makes you terrified to go out in the world.
Wow.
And that's what I wanted to do with these. I wanted to make them super realistic so that if someone were to come in the room when someone else is watching it, they would have no idea that they're watching a movie.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Were you a found footage fan before this? Like, were you into the subgenre at all?
I was, but not as much as I am now, because I did not realize the massive audience that found footage has. Like, there's horror fans, and then there are found footage horror fans, and they will like fuck shit up to find a good found footage horror movie.
Who does this sound like in this conversation?
I have never never downloaded a movie that didn't have an English language track, even though it was in English, and then downloaded a poorly translated subtitle track to go over top of it to watch a missing early 2000s found footage movie. What are you talking about?
Never. It's never happened.
Anyway.
That's where I'm getting now.
Found footage fans are like, we are small, but we are mighty. And I know that your films have really picked up a lot of love in those like Facebook groups and those communities. Like, what has that been like interacting with this community of fans?
Amazing. When it first came out, it was rejected by Amazon because during the pandemic they had this they were not accepting documentaries, they weren't accepting nonfiction that was independently produced because they were getting a ton of like vaccine stuff and pandemic propaganda,
the misinformation out there.
So it was just like an across the board, we're not taking documentaries, and unfortunately they grouped Horror in the High Desert in with that because it's presented as a documentary.
Oh.
So it went to Tubi, and I had never heard of Tubi. I just was like, what the F? You know, I was kind of crushed, but it ended up becoming a huge blessing because Tubi also has a ton of found footage. And
they do.
I started getting all these messages from like literally all over the world because Tubi's in Australia, Mexico, New Zealand, Canada. And it was just, it's honestly been incredible. It came out like 2 years ago now, I think, the first one, and it is still like on the rise. It's blows my mind. I feel like the luckiest guy ever.
Well, like Tubi is the best place for found footage though. And I feel like people are slowly starting to realize like how cool Tubi is and like the hidden gems you can find on Tubi. Like some of the best found footage movies I have found on Tubi.
Same. It's amazing. Stuff I would have had never heard of is on Tubi.
I mean, recently I watched Savage Land there, and that was that's only streaming. Good. That's only streaming on Tubi. That's the only place that was available when I was looking on my Amazon or my Apple app. There's a lot. It has a wealth of found footage things, which I didn't even know about until Mary Beth was like, yeah, this is where you need to go for.
The goddess of found footage.
But so I love that. But I'm also really curious, like, how did you get into horror movies? Have you always been a horror fan?
Yeah, but it didn't start with movies.
Okay.
It actually started with, and I feel like you guys might be too young to relate to this, Scooby-Doo.
Too young? I'm 42.
Oh my god, you look like a fucking baby.
I'm 42 years old. I'm like, dude, yeah.
Oh my god,
I love Scooby-Doo.
Amazing.
That was my cartoon of choice.
So you know Scooby-Doo.
I do know Scooby-Doo.
Okay, I am a baby, but I know Scooby-Doo because my family fucking loves Scooby-Doo, and I watched it religiously as a kid.
Would you not call it horror though?
Absolutely.
For a kid?
Oh, 100% it's horror for kids. It's so scary. It's like, even though it's almost always like a dude in a suit,
a person,
it's still terrifying. Also, this is later, but Scooby-Doo Zombie Island is really scary. Have you seen Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island?
I've not. I know that is the Horror Queers' Trace's favorite Scooby-Doo incarnation. I've never seen it though. Have you, Dutch?
I'm having a moment because I literally just rented that. Someone on Twitter shared it, and I had never seen it.
It's supposed to be one of the best.
I was like, rent.
It's so good. It's spooky. It's actually like a spooky Scooby-Doo. So anyway,
I love it. They're all some of them are not spooky. Like the old Scooby-Doo movies. There's one where Scooby-Doo goes to Hollywood. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
I don't think I have.
Didn't Scooby-Doo meet Abbott and Costello? Did that ever happen? That one happened. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Scooby-Doo meets Batman and Robin. I think that might be my favorite.
Yeah,
with the Joker in the woods. God, and that terrifying little dryad thing.
I forgot about that. It's funny. To this day, I still run around and I will say puppy power because of Scrappy. I love Scrappy as a kid.
Oh, I forgot. That's another good one when they go to the Grand Canyon with Scrappy.
I think I remember that one. It's been so long since I've watched the cartoons, but they were a favorite for me. So that's how you got introduced?
Mm-hmm. Scooby-Doo, and then I loved Hey Dude, the cartoon Hey Dude. And they had, or not a cartoon, it was a TV show for kids.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And it was on Nickelodeon, and it was, I don't even think they were teenagers. They were like children working at a ranch. And they had a spooky episode called Ghost Stories.
Okay.
That totally scared the shit out of me. And things like, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Those kind of, and then it just kind of went from there. My dad was a huge cinephile, so he was always watching like Aliens, Indiana Jones, Jaws.
Yeah.
This stuff was just like always on at my house. And my mom is like the OG true crime fan. She always had, like some murder something on TV.
Wait, what did she think of Horror in the High Desert then?
She loves it. She's so cute. She's so proud of me. She's even if she hated it, she'd love it.
But I'm starting to see a little bit. You say OG, true crime, horror on the other side, or cinema on the other side in particular. And then Horror in the High Desert kind of combines those two in a way. I mean, it's not true crime, but it's presented as true crime. So I can sort of see how that like childhood kind of comes together to make these two movies.
Absolutely.
Huh.
And you grew up in Nevada, right? Like, did you grow up like in the rural Nevada? Like, I don't. It's weird. Like, I've never lived like the desert. So do you call it rural Nevada? I don't know if that's the right way to describe it.
Yeah,
middle of
it
desert.
Actually couldn't
Nevada?
Be more rural. It's
really?
The town I grew up in is the most remote town in the continental U.S.
Oh shit.
It is when you watch the first Horror in the High Desert, the town that Gary lived in, it shows like a drone shot of it that's not even that high in the air, and you can see the entire town. It's called Ruth. It's 300 people.
Oh wow.
It's like more of a village.
You grew up there?
300 people.
How was that?
I honestly credit my imagination to growing up in the middle of nowhere.
That'll do it. I mean, it really, truly will.
I mean, I can kind of relate because I grew up when we moved to Alaska when I was like 2 or 3-ish, and it's where we lived was not like I think it had more people than 300, but it was definitely like a very isolating place where we were, and people in Alaska, particularly where we were, you were either for lifers there. And you were older, or you were a lot of military families that came. And so it was really hard for me to make friends because I was very introverted, very shy. And you'd make a friend and then they would probably be going away with their family like in a couple of years, whereas my parents were there until my dad retired. So I understand needing that creativity and that imagination to like keep you through in those isolating places.
You kind of just described a lot of what it's like there.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people. Well, for the most part, it stayed like the core. Like my graduating class was 90 people.
Oh, wow.
But quite a few people would like come and go as well. It was a lot of chasing horny toads and catching lizards and lighting fires and letting cows out and just country chaos.
Country chaos. I love it.
But did you ever have like spooky experiences that would like inspired anything in the horror in the high desert? Not to say that you saw anything out there, but I'm just curious if like you had any cool experiences.
Anytime we camped, I scared the shit out of myself just thinking of things. But one of the scariest things that I remember is I was camping with my dad and my uncle. We were at Lake Mead. And we were kind of like right off of the shore, our tent. It was this huge tent. And I thought everybody was asleep. I started hearing like something moving around our campground. Ugh. And I was like, God damn it. Do I wake him up and look like a total little bitch? Or like stay terrified and we all get murdered? Like, what do I do? And it went on for a little bit longer, and then my dad sat up, and I realized like he was awake. We all just kind of sat there for a minute. My uncle sat up, and I was like, "What is that?" And he said, "I don't know." And him saying "I don't know" sent like I almost fainted. My heart was like boom, 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 boom. But he was a total badass. He unzipped the tent. And it was a can that was just like rolling up and down with the waves.
Oh no.
but to see my dad also kind of like ready to throw down was something I'll never forget.
Well, and you look to like your parents to be like that, it's okay, everything's gonna be fine, and then to hear him say, I don't know, I can understand that feeling of just like, oh God, what's happening?
Get out there and kill it.
Kill that can.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. So you said that you kind of got into horror with Scooby-Doo, but do you remember the first horror movie or in that genre that you might have seen as a kid? Do you have the memory at all?
I'm pretty sure it was Aliens.
Okay.
I did not see the whole thing. I was like ushered out of the living room. That was the first thing I kind of remember, like just a glimpse of. But the first thing that literally traumatized me was the movie that we're here to talk about.
Okay. Cool.
Gotcha.
But so before we talk about this movie, though, like, were you a scared kid? Were you easily scared?
Yes, but I also loved scaring all my sisters.
How many sisters do you have?
4.
Oh, God. Where are you in the rankings?
So it's me and my twin sister. And then, so we're the babies. And then 3 older sisters.
No, so you are the shitty little brother.
I was a total shithead. I mean, I like traumatized
this explains
them
so much. I'm just kidding.
I used to get into so much trouble. After Scream came out, which was one of my other first like movies, that as soon as I got a hold of that mask, it was on. I got in so much trouble because my sister her bedroom was upstairs, my twin sister, and I went up. I had the most incredible time doing this too. Her bedroom window looked out over the roof of like the first story. We used to like crawl out there and hang out. So I taped it to the outside of the window, the mask, like ahead of time.
You suck.
She
fucking suck.
Got out of the shower, went upstairs, like do, and then literally came like a sled. She wasn't even like running. She just slid down all the stairs like on her back and butt. My dad got involved. It was like this whole thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was definitely a shit.
Oh my God. I'm the oldest and I have brothers. So that's why I was like, I know exactly what fucking kid you are.
That was me.
Oh my God.
Oh wow.
Oh my God. But I am curious about, like, do you still get scared now when you watch like horror movies? Do you ever get scared, or are you kind of a little bit more numb to it?
I'm definitely more numb to it.
Okay.
Which sucks because it's so rare to find something that just like, like really gives you that rush of fear.
Do you remember the last time you got that rush?
I do. It was actually another mockumentary, The First Blackwell Ghost.
That movie is so fucking scary. People need to watch The Blackwell Ghost.
The Blackwell Ghost, yeah. I was watching it in bed on my phone, and I actually caught up and clicked the light on towards the end.
I did the same thing. I had to take the earphones off my ears a little bit. I was getting freaked out because I was watching it in the dark, and I was like, ooh, wait.
Right? It just hits if you're home.
I don't like this.
Don't like it.
Thank you.
If you're home in your own, because that's what he's in his house, or not his house, but he's in a house doing the ghost hunting thing, which has been done to death. But the way it's done in these movies is it just hits so right that it totally freaked me out.
It feels very realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them can feel so cheesy and hokey. But this guy, it feels like it's a YouTube channel. He just makes it feel so real.
Yes.
And the scares are so simple, but they're done so well that it doesn't matter that they're simple. He's not trying to make CGI things happen, but he's just really smart with how he uses the jump scares. And the fucking house that I'm in is kind of like the house in Blackwell Ghost that I just realized.
Oh,
so
God.
Fuck me, I guess. They have a creepy basement and everything.
Oh,
they don't have an open well. They do not have an open well in the basement, thank God.
That was the thing that reeled me into that movie. I was like, oh, well, in your basement? What on earth? And it's got that spooky metal cover thing. You just throw a body right down there and put the cover on.
Yep. I think there's 5 of them, right? 5 of
7.
them now? There's 7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've seen 2 of them. I haven't seen the rest, but they're all on Prime Video / you can rent them on Prime, I believe.
Yeah, I think the first one is streaming and the rest are rental.
Yeah. So if y'all want to check it out, I recommend. And they're short too. They're pretty short.
Yeah, I think that was the last time I remember being actually scared.
Speaking of which, that just triggered a memory. I've been going through TikTok, and I did stumble across someone that was renovating their kitchen because they found a well in their kitchen that was boarded up, and they're going through renovating to try to make it as part of their kitchen. I'm like, that's how you unleash the evil. I've seen this movie way too many times.
That shit is boarded up for a reason.
Yeah, just board it up. Fuck that.
Leave it, Nancy.
Leave it there. Fill it with cement and pretend it's not there. Or, just move.
Yes.
Maybe just move.
How did they sneak that past the home inspector? There's a lake under here.
It seems it felt like a very British house, so I feel I don't know what inspections are like on old British farmhouses, but probably here's just a well in the middle of the floor or whatever. All right, well, let's take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, Dutch, we will talk about your Scarred for Life pick. And we're back. All right, Dutch, what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
Today, I brought the epic 1995 thriller. I would call this a horror thriller, but it's a thriller. Copycat.
All right, so in Copycat, an agoraphobic psychologist, played by Sigourney Weaver, and a female detective, played by Holly Hunter, must work together to take down a serial killer who copies serial killers from the past.
Yeah.
Even that summary is
it's a good summary.
Yeah. We've had some really bad ones from IMDb, but that one is actually, outside of saying serial killer twice in a sentence, it's a good one. But take us back. How you said that this was the the movie when you were kind of teasing it a little earlier. So how old were you when you saw this? How did you see this? Give us your horror story. I want to hear it all.
Okay. So I was I want to say 11 because it came out when I was 10, but that means it probably wouldn't have been on like rental or on TV for at least a year back then.
Right.
And my mom, I'm pretty sure, like, I was so terrified by this, the setting is kind of like a blur to me. But my mom and some of my sisters were watching it. And I think I had missed like that wild opening scene. Oh. So I was kind of just settling into the like movie. Oh, they're looking for a killer. La 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 la. And then when she gets the email in the movie, Sigourney Weaver, you know, she's like trying to help them find this serial killer. And he sends her an email, which is hysterical to rewatch because it's an actual mailbox on her desktop. And the little red flag pops up.
I love it so much. It's so good.
The 90s of it all.
And she opens it, and it's a picture of a victim. And they're in this, like, grisly position in the bathtub. One arm is, like, hanging over the tub. One leg's up on the wall. And then the killer who has sent this to her animates it. So the body, like, lifts up, and the limbs start swinging around like a rag doll. And it starts making this horrifying scream. That's what definitely scarred me for life, like that specific thing. And that's when they're like, okay, you got to get out of here. Like, go to your room. And I snuck back and watched the rest of it over the couch from the other part of the other living room.
Oh, you snuck back in?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get caught?
No. I didn't even finish it because I got to the end where like that big climax scene and ran back to my bedroom. Like a total little shit. But I think it was the beginning of my insomnia because I could not sleep. I literally couldn't sleep. Yeah, I was so scared.
Oh my gosh. So you said you were 11 when you saw this.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I'd never seen really anything like that.
Yeah.
And but I was like totally just wrapped up in it. I was terrified, but I could not stop watching it. I was just like, this is making me feel something.
Wow.
So yeah, it's what definitely scarred me.
So I would have been 14 or 15 when this came out, 'cause I did not see it in theaters. I had I have a very vivid memory of seeing part of this when I saw it on VHS, and my parents had rented it. I was downstairs with them, and all I remember about this movie is that opening scene. The opening scene where Sigourney Weaver, who was a fave, and like I had seen her struggles through Ghostbusters, seen her struggles through the Alien movies. Just a few years before that, you know, she was saying goodbye to the Alien movies and had died. I was traumatized and heartsick over that. And I was like, new Sigourney Weaver movie, because if I got attached to particularly female actresses, I would be watching everything. I went on this whole journey of Nicole Kidman because of Moulin Rouge.
Terry, you didn't know you were gay?
Listen, there are so many things looking back on it that I'm so like, much. Really?
Wait a minute.
You're not very self-aware, young Terry. That is all. Although at this time,
closeted Terry thirsting after Sigourney Weaver, realizing,
I'll tell you. So I remember I was 14 or 15. I remember watching this opening scene with my parents, and even though I was 14 or 15, being like so traumatized by the end of that cold open, where you don't know, like, immediately that she's alive, like it goes to Copycat and everything. I got sent out of the room. My parents are like, no, you can't watch the rest of this. And so in my mind, I was like, wait, Sigourney Weaver's dead. And that's all I had to go on was this very brief moment of like, and I'm pretty sure I was walking up the stairs as he was licking his knife. And my parents had banished me, and I was like, And so that night, as I was wont to do, I snuck that VHS and I tried watching it, but my parents were up and down all night, and so I couldn't finish watching it. So I have a very disjointed memory of seeing this movie, and all I remember today is that opening scene and the scene that you talked about, Dutch. I do remember, like, I was like, that's where that memory was unlocked with the
scary,
herky-jerky movement of the...
We pretty much have identical memories of this, but mine is like the big climax scene, which is a mirror of the opening scene.
Yes, it is.
I did not know about this movie until Dutch recommended, like, brought it to the show. So I was very excited to watch it because, well, I wasn't sure what to expect. I was like, this could either be really good or like a very mid 90s crime movie. But like, those are fun. I am now obsessed with this movie because holy shit, it is so good and fun. But that cold open, like, just sets the tone of like, take no prisoners. Like, we are just hanging Sigourney Weaver at the very beginning in her fucking red power
and her
suit.
High heels, like it's just so iconic.
And her high heels, and it's Harry Connick Jr. as Callum, like the creepy killer who hears Joan of Arc whispering in his ear. Like, what a creepy ass. Like, when I started watching this, I was like, oh, this is definitely not what I was expecting. And
I think for someone who watched it for the first time, so I'm guessing you would say it aged well.
For the most part. For the most part, yeah. There's a couple parts where I'm like, ooh, not a great, but I think it did. I think Holly Hunter and Sigourney Weaver here are just like pitch perfect, incredible bad bitches. And it's just like, when I logged on, I was talking to Terry before we started recording. I said, Seven who? And I love Seven. I am not saying that this is better than Seven by any means. But this deserves its flowers because it is like, it has Seven vibes, way less gritty, but still.
It holds up. It's like, I was actually reading too before we hopped on here, like some trivia, and Sigourney Weaver, she said, well, first to prepare for that role, she consulted with a forensic psychiatrist for months, and it was the one who interviewed Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh.
And then she also said that she thinks that this is some of her best work and that she really hates that it was kind of lost in the shuffle of all of those other 90s thrillers.
I agree, though, because she is incredible. I was thinking that. I was like, Sigourney Weaver, one, hasn't aged. I feel like that woman has just been, like, hot forever. But, like, this is an incredible performance. And I feel like she's messy in this movie. Like, she is, like, an alcoholic, agoraphobic, traumatized, really intelligent woman. And especially in, like, the 90s, we didn't get those kinds of characters. Yeah. We got more, like, Holly Hunter characters who were, like, pretty squarely in one box. And Sigourney Weaver also, though, I guess we could argue that Ripley is a messy character, but I feel like Ripley is also very squarely, like, an action hero. And then we've seen her in a lot of roles as, like a president / like, leadership role. But here, we see her get messy and be kind of just like a chaotic, unhinged, just not well character that was really cool to see her play. Because again, I feel like we see her in such bombastic roles, and this one I think was so good. So I'm glad to hear that she said that about this movie.
Yeah, like it is so interesting to see her be a mess. And one of the scenes that I thought that I kind of giggled at today, even though it's like not funny, is where she has her first panic attack when Holly Hunter comes over and she's like flailing around, collapsing, and they're like, is she okay? Do we need to call an ambulance? And he literally goes, it's okay, just a good old-fashioned panic attack. She's gonna hyperventilate till she passes out.
Yeah.
With a paper bag.
With a paper bag. He throws he throws the artisanal San Francisco sourdough out of the bag and hands it to her. And I was like, I have not seen someone hyperventilate in a bag in a movie in what feels like decades.
So wild, yeah.
That was wild. I was like, oh, I forgot that we didn't understand these people have panic attacks.
Because I've had panic attacks that have like wound me up in the emergency room, and they did not look like that. I was like, I'm dying.
She just passes passes out for 30 minutes and then she'll be back up singing. And I'm like, that seems like a seizure.
It's a little more than a panic attack.
But let me just say, her gay assistant is everything to me. The gay assistant, when they're talking about sex, and then when he comes in with his partner, and they're in like their colorful outfits, and they're like, it's the power of love. And I was like, wait, this movie is so good. What is it?
Like, so ahead of its time. I was gonna ask you, Terry, did you, when you were watching it, were you like, oh my god, this is a gay man?
You know, back when I watched it, I remembered the character, and because when he entered, I was like, oh, he reminds me of, and he reminds me of Mork and Mindy, and which is Robin Williams, right?
Yeah.
But it reminded me of one of the characters. But I'm staring at him, and I'm like, I don't remember thinking about it as a kid.
Same.
But now I'm like, dang. 1995 got a gay character in there, not making a big deal about it. Like, just it surprises me looking back on it, with particularly 1995, with everything that was going on in the 90s with queer people. I was like, this is quietly a very forward-thinking movie. Very quietly. I mean, yeah, the gay character does end up getting killed, and it's sort of because death is a plot point because of Jeffrey Dahmer, but still, the fact that it's just this normal interaction between the two of them at a time fraught for gay men in particular.
When I rewatched it last night, it occurred to me, I was like, I think this might have been the first gay man I saw in a movie. And I was so young, I didn't even, like relate to it yet. But, I thought that was amazing. But is it him that's murdered, or is it his boyfriend? I think it's his partner.
No, I think it was Andy.
Was it?
I think it.
Do I have it pulled up?
Yeah. So according to Wikipedia, it is Andy. Okay. Andy was killed.
Poor Andy.
Poor Andy. He didn't deserve that.
I also think this movie is progressive in the fact that, like, I mean, not just the fact that we have two women as like our main characters, but the men around them take the role of women in a way, because the men fight about like Holly Hunter's character, but like they don't really talk. But like the female characters like don't really talk about them.
Yeah.
But the men are like jealous and fighting over ladies behind their back and like having like squabbles with each other while the female characters are off doing other shit. But then Sigourney Weaver like comes on to Dermot Mulroney's character as she's like drinking a snifter of brandy and like hits on him in front of her computer. The whole movie. But like she's like hitting on him, and she's like, because like she just talked about missing sex, and then she's like, but she's like missing sex, and then talking with Andy about thinking that Ruben, Dermot Mulroney's character, who's a cop, is hot. Then she fucking hits on him, and he stays the night and takes care of her. But I just love that, like, it just subverts a lot of expectations from these kinds of movies so much, and not in a way that is like, look at these empowered women, but like it feels organic, and I just absolutely love that. And again, like, Dermot Mulroney is kind of a himbo. Like, he's a little bit useless. And like, he has like, and it's just like, he's like a little bit useless, but he's really cute. And he has a really good relationship with MJ, Holly Hunter's character. That's really sweet. And it's like just very wholesome, which is a weird word to say with this movie, but like the relationships in a lot of this feel very like kind of wholesome and like
they do like that.
Good. I loved when.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to agree and say like that what made it so much more like devastating when he gets killed unexpectedly, that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. Oh. I yelled. I was like, are you I was like, what is this? What? No, this isn't fair. It's like when you kill a dog in a movie, you can't kill the golden retriever sidekick.
And what I love about that moment, though, is that it has nothing to do with the story.
Nothing.
It's not as if like the killers kidnapped him or, whatever the case may be. It is literally life just gets in the way, and some random acts of violence occur, and he's now dead. It was out of nowhere. I was like, whoa, I don't remember this happening at all, because in my head, when I first saw him, I was like, wait, is he the killer? I was like, I couldn't remember. And then we see, the killer is there, and we it's obviously not him. But like, my first thought was like, wait, was he the killer? Because he doesn't seem to, I don't know. He seems to be there for a specific purpose, and then all of a sudden he's offed.
I literally wrote in my notes, love the dynamic between Holly Hunter and Dermot Mulroney, so he's definitely the killer.
So
it's like literally a note I wrote to myself. I was like, so he's definitely the killer. Yeah. I was wrong, but I'm glad that I wasn't the only one that was like, okay, so he is definitely but I do love a movie in this case, where it's not someone that like we are introduced to and is like a main character. It's not trying to pull that like
it's not a
it's a twist. Like that. I do kind of love that a little bit. I do love a twist, but there's something about like this and like Seven that where it's like, oh, it's a completely random weirdo. That to me makes it even more fucked up. Like it is just a random dude, and
who has a wife and like has this whole other, like wild ass thing going on at home.
Like speaking of true crime, I mean, I feel like this movie is just like every true crime nerd's like wet dream, because it is going through all of the like horrible ways that different serial killers killed like their victims, and so it's just like if you love serial
one
killers,
of them with Windex.
Yes.
And also, like, on that same note, in the opening, how chilling is it when she's like, everyone stand up. If you're under 20 or above 35, sit down. If you're Asian, black, or any person of color, sit down. And all that's left is white men between 20 and 35. And she's like, 9 out of 10 serial killers look just like you. To me, I was like, again, this is... If they were to kind of reshoot some parts, this could come out today and still be totally, like take off.
Yeah, now people would be saying, "Oh, it's woke."
Yeah,
that would be the conservative response to this film. This movie is woke.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to stick with the opening a little bit, because one of the things that absolutely made me die laughing was after the lecture's over and she's in the hall and I think she's like signing autographs or whatever. And she says, "Don't park next to vans."
I love that you brought that up. It's I have it in capital letters over here. "Don't park next to men," and just hands her notebook back. Incredible. There's some one-liners in here that are so good.
It's so good.
Nice to meet you. Don't park next to men. Oh, okay, girl. That made me giggle. And then when Holly Hunter's boss just casually calls her a stubborn broad, and it's like, whatever. She just leaves. I'm like, oh no.
It's such a trope, I think, particularly in 90s thrillers with women detectives, because Silence of the Lambs, she got kind of downplayed a lot too, but the fact that he calls her broad in this, I was like, oh my gosh, I miss sometimes that 90s era of just the cop thriller, I think, because as much as it's like, ACAB, those were great. Those were a great like subgenre of films back in the 90s that like now it's like you look back like cops, fuck you. But at the time I'm like, give me this, give me like The Bone Collector, give me, all of those like
Bone Collector.
Was it James Patterson movies that all the like the
and like
with Morgan Freeman.
Oh, I just watched one I'd never seen with him. What's the other good one I'm trying to think of with Sharon Stone? Basic Instinct.
Basic Instinct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That era. Like I was Googling to see what kind of movies like were similar to this, and there were just a whole glut of them, from like Seven and a movie called Blue Steel, and then we had like, it went up into like the early 2000s with Taking Lives and Along Came a Spider and a lot of those type of movies. Bone Collector, I think, was at the very end of that decade, but Kiss the Girls as well. But it was just such like a rush of them that came after, I think Silence of the Lambs sort of like kickstarted a lot of that kind of that craze for him, because that movie was such a big hit.
Yeah. It was like a trailblazer.
But I do kind of miss those movies. I'll be perfectly honest. I enjoyed that sort of like, I guess, cat and mouse type of game between a detective, because in a lot of these movies, you know who the killer is. Like, you know who the killer is in Silence of the Lambs. You know who the killer is in this movie. And it's just sort of like that kind of back and forth between the people that are trying to find them and also the killer that kind of harkens back, I guess, to maybe my love of like the whodunit slasher, but also sort of like giallo films and like that kind of 70s style of crime thriller that was coming out at that time. I don't know. I love them, and maybe it's because I grew up on them.
They're kind of like a comfort thing.
They are. It's weird to say this is a comfort watch, but like it feels like
Sigourney Weaver, Jesus, Sigourney Weaver hanging from a plumbing pipe by her neck is just comforting.
I feel held by this. I feel held by this movie, but. I mean, like, it's the procedural format, you know, it's like a CSI or a Law and Order, like, you know it's going to happen, but it's always, like, satisfying, because it always is, like, compelling enough that even if you can kind of tell where it's going.
See, they're like grown-up Scooby-Doos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Procedural.
Yes.
See?
Yeah.
Huh.
With boobs.
I hadn't even thought about that.
The 90s loved the boobs. Oh, yeah. There were like the most gratuitous sex scenes in these movies.
Loved some titties.
Yeah. I was actually surprised we didn't get like a shot of Sigourney Weaver in the shower in this movie. Like this feels like that kind of movie that they would have leaned into that a bit, to be perfectly honest. But they were very surprisingly reserved, I would say, in this movie.
I was surprised they didn't show Dermot Mulroney like sucking on Sigourney Weaver's tit. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I feel like there was an edited scene there. I feel like they cut something out when he stayed the night.
I would have loved that because 90s sex scenes were so steamy and so good.
They had that porn music.
What I would do to see a Sigourney Weaver Dermot Mulroney sex scene, like, if I was Dermot Mulroney and even if Sigourney Weaver was just acting, flirting with me, I would be like, I am stunned into silence. Like, I don't even think he was acting. I'd be like, I can't even believe she's pretending to flirt with me.
Yeah. Where are we? What's going on? Who are we? I love, too, that she's drinking day and night in that movie, and she looks like $1 million. If I woke up drinking, I'd look like a blood clot by 10:30. And she's like popping pills, swigging brandy, looking like she just woke up, but like rested, just woke up in a good way.
Like, her hair is beautiful, and she's always had a shower, and she always has clean clothes on, and her apartment is clean, and those windows.
That apartment.
Are you kidding me?
What I also do love though is that there's a moment where Sigourney Weaver thinks that maybe someone had been in her house because her powers have been laid out. Yeah. And then like later on, she's being confronted by Holly Hunter's character, MJ, who's like, why didn't you report this? And her response is, I've taken a lot of pills. I've been drinking. And it's like, would you have believed me? And I think that it's such a throwaway little moment, but it definitely speaks to sort of that kind of tension between, looking back on it now, you can almost see this is like the kernel of what we get with sort of like the Gone Girl bad archetype that we've seen in a lot of like recent movies where like it's always an unreliable narrator. I'm thinking like the girl was a girl on the train or like kind of thing where they're, drinking or they're doing, drugs or something like that, where they're unreliable. And it kind of creates that sort of tension between, is what's happening really them or not? And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is kind of the start of that sort of character gone bad, quote unquote. Yeah. Where like, they're drinking or they're taking pills. And so to everyone else, they are unreliable and you can't really believe what they're saying because maybe they're making things up.
Mm-hmm. And back then it was a little like less refined. It was a little tropey where like, oh my God, anyone on antidepressants is like crazy or,
when you see someone run to go get a pill, they're like, they are at the end of their rope because
can't
pills,
trust her.
Oh my God. Like it's such a visual signifier in like the 90s that like, oh, she's having problems. And it's not like, no, she's taking care of her mental health. It's like,
exactly.
It's such a, I don't know.
And they even say like she's leaking like a rusty bucket because like she's on antidepressants and they're like, I was like, that's certainly a phrase that you could say.
Wait, is that a line in the movie? Leaking like a rusty bucket?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because she says you have, like, the commissioner needs you to stop talking to her. Like, she's leakier than a rusty bucket, and, like, in reference to her having horrible, like, being crazy and, like, unreliable because she's
sounds so filthy.
Antidepressant. Yes, I know. It's so fucked up. I was like,
oh my god.
She's agoraphobic, so she must be insane.
A rusty bucket.
Good lord.
I did think this was an interesting depiction of PTSD, though.
True.
Yeah.
I love that this is also a very early movie to adopt, like, people reaching out to each other via the internet.
Yes.
Like, it's so cool how it does that, and how, like, she's in chat rooms. She's playing online multiplayer. Like, she's playing, it's chess, or it's chess. They're playing chess.
She's playing chess.
Yeah. And so, like, with another person online, and she's talking to people who are agoraphobic on, like, finding support groups online. Like, even when we see her get her emails, like, you see, like, we talked about the little red flag coming up, and then she opens the weird video, and then we see the killer editing videos, and it's, like, this very cool proto, like, second screen horror type thing going on here, where we're, like, actually seeing the internet used, and, like, technology used in a way that, again, like, in the 90s, we're not seeing a lot of, like, sophisticated, like, digital online stuff, and this one, again, is, like, ahead of its time, and how it is using technology and having one of its main characters, like, well versed in technology, and how she uses that to reach outside of her apartment. Again, that feels very contemporary for our current moment, which is really interesting, like, especially for this was 1995.
Yeah, if you were to just swap out that 200-pound computer monitor, it could pass.
Can you imagine having that many, like, 3 of them brick computer monitors on your desk?
How hot? Oh yeah, how hot was it in that room? Like, how loud? Like, Jesus, I can imagine.
So one thing that I don't think has aged incredibly well is Harry Connick Jr.'s
God, his hillbilly character.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a hillbilly, but then I was also like, when I was rewatching this, and when the cop opens up the restroom doors and is looking there, and there are 2 women's legs, I was like, oh, is this a man in a dress killer again? Like, that was my first thought. Was like, is that what we're going with here? And then it's like, no, we're going with hillbilly horror, because he is definitely, like, the redneck. At one point when they're doing, like, speaking of technology, the video FaceTiming almost of each other.
Yes.
I was like, wait, is he channeling Ernest? Because he felt like he felt like, I almost wanted him to say, like, you know what I mean, Vern? Like, he was channeling that sort of, like, the facial features and everything. I was like, this is Ernest as a serial killer, and this is camp to me almost. At this moment.
He was definitely over the top.
It was a weird addition to a movie that I thought had a pretty serious tone, and then adds, like, that camp. Like, it was a little bit, like, weird, like, too over the top. It was a very weird addition to the movie whenever he showed up. I was like,
especially in the climax too.
Yes.
Fun fact about this too, which makes it even a little more painful. I'm looking at the IMDb page for it. Harry Connick Jr. spent weeks watching documentaries on serial killers in preparation for his role. Which ones were you watching, homie?
Yeah, seriously.
Because all the ones that I've seen, they don't act like that.
Yeah, no.
He was in a different movie, I have to say.
He was in a different movie. Like, the licking the knife and just, like, the pimples all over his face. It was just, like, it was very earnest. It was very, like, almost like Dumb and Dumber, like, Jim Carrey's character. It was just, that was the only part that, like, took me out of the movie a little bit. I was like, who is this clown? Like, you don't freak me out. Like, you kind of just, clown? Like, yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, and then when he's, sorry. I feel like I keep interrupting you. I'm so sorry. Then when he says, and this is in the trivia too, I laughed so hard. I've got to find this. Give me 1 second. When I'm not going to scroll forever. Basically, when the director told him to improvise when he is cutting off her underwear. And he's like, come up with your own word for it. And he called them squirrel covers.
Yes!
What the fuck? I was like, where am I? Like, what? Did I change the channel? Like, and they were, I just love how they were both like, what are you saying to me?
He said he had heard his brother-in-law say it. Yeah, your panties.
Your panties. Like, I did love how she was like, we'll send promptly. Like, she's just like, it's so.
Like, I don't know how to respond. How would you respond to that? Squirrel covers. I wrote that in giant letters too. That was what I wrote, and then literally, why is he channeling Ernest right after that?
Oh, he's such a weird character in this movie.
But I will say it's obvious that this movie came out after Silence of the Lambs, because like the idea of the woman detective and like the guy that is a serial killer that is now behind bars that you have to go to get information about the case. Like, it is definitely, it almost felt like they were hoping that this would create like a series, because by the end of the stinger at the end where you find out that, he's been, reaching out to this killer and now he's wanting another killer to go after her. It's almost like, are we trying to set up a franchise here? What is going on?
Yeah. I mean, they probably
it does have that vibe.
I do like the MO of the serial killer copying other serial killers. Like, that's actually kind of a smart little idea.
Well, I also feel like it makes it easier for you not to have to make up crereative kills.
Well, that's fair too.
Feel like a really creative
that's
loophole
a good point.
To get away with having to like think of different ways to kill. It's like, wait, we'll just have him copy these guys, and then we can just copy it. And it's smart though. Like, again, it is a smart conceit, and it also just helps you how you come up with the kills. And I think it helped that they added this weirdo, like, is online making video. Like, they added enough flares to it that it didn't feel lazy. It felt like he was truly, like, a creepazoid. Just, like, a fucking creepazoid.
I feel like this is going to be one of those movies that's remade soon.
It has that energy.
It does have that energy, because it's just one of those things where I just don't know who our Holly Hunter and Sigourney Weaver are right now. Like, who are, like, generations. Like, who are they?
Oh, that's a good question. Who would be Sigourney Weaver? I mean, there's nobody like Sigourney Weaver.
And, like, this is the problem, because they're still, she's obviously, like, very much still alive, and so is Holly Hunter. And, like, they're just, this is going to sound, like, so, cheesy, but, like, I just feel like 90s movie stars are just built different than, like, contemporary, like, newer movie stars. I just feel like there was something about, like, star quality in the 90s that we don't have as much now. You know what I mean?
Agree.
Like, I feel like the 90s was, like, prime, like, stars and like, like, in, like, big movies, and I feel like the 90s stars were, like, kind of, like, the big, like, the end of, like, the kind of, like, the shining end of all of that era. And I just don't think, like, we have any, like, big movie stars like that.
It's
that
really
are, like, a little bit
strange.
Younger.
I was thinking about this the other day, because what's her name? Jennifer Aniston said this in an interview, and she was like, my point is not that we don't have good actors. It's that they're not, it's becoming almost less of a profession now that we have TikTok stars and Instagram stars, and they all kind of, because everyone now is after your following, your followers. Like, they want to cast people who have a following type of thing. Legitimate shows and movies don't, but it is weird. I was trying to think of, like, who are our younger movie stars right now? And
like,
I was having a hard time. Yeah.
Florence Pugh is
Flo
one.
Pugh.
Flo Pugh. I
think definitely Jenna Ortega has a chance to become one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Jenna Ortega is, like, and she's, like, super younger, and, like, she's a lot younger too. I feel like Margaret Qualley's getting up there.
What's his name too from Scream? Mason Gooding.
Oh, Mason. Yeah.
Oh, what a himbo! He always plays himbos in roles, and I'm like, I love him. He didn't realize until, like, recently that he is Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son.
I was blown away.
Put those two together.
Yeah.
I guess like, Kate Winslet is, like, the same generation of actors, but I feel like I'd love to see her maybe even play, like, the Sigourney Weaver character, like, in a Copycat. I feel like I see, like, her or, like, a Toni Collette. And again, like, they're still kind of in that generation of actors, but I feel like because of, like, recent successes they've had and, like, Mayor of Easttown and a bunch of shit like that, I feel like they could be cool in something, like, some kind of style like this.
I would love to see like Nicole Kidman take a whack at that kind of a. I just love her.
Yeah. Oh God, what was that movie she was in where she was like a grizzled cop? It was the Karen Kusama movie, and she was like in that like really like the makeup that everyone. Destroyer.
She was a cop.
She was like she was like a grizzled, like corrupt cop or something. Yeah,
I can't even imagine that.
It wasn't like the best movie. No offense to Karen Kusama and Nicole Kidman, but let her try it again.
I guess while they were filming, Holly Hunter was so short compared to Sigourney Weaver that in their face-to-face scenes, Sigourney Weaver's actually sitting in a chair.
And I was wondering because there was like a shot of Holly Hunter walking down a hallway with her lieutenant, and she like literally comes up to like
his hip.
Right, and I'm like, she's small. How tall is he? Really tall? Is she really short, or both? Because like that was the first time that I realized in this movie the height difference between her and some of her co-stars, because you don't notice it with her and Sigourney and all that kind of stuff, and so that makes sense to me because Sigourney's tall.
She's 5'2". Yeah, I just googled it.
Holy cow!
Oh, she's small,
so tiny.
And Sigourney was like 6 foot. Oh, mommy.
Amazon queen. I will say on this watch, I definitely felt there was a little bit of sexual tension between the two of them. That when they first meet and they have that conversation and they're kind of like trading barbs back and forth, I was like, ooh, if this was a different movie and the gender of one of them was flipped, this would be like that smoldering affair type moment between the two of them, because they have that sort of easygoing interplay between the two of them when they're throwing barbs at each other. It's so
it's like I need you, we need you on this case. Fuck you. It's like, oh really?
But then like she like bursts in, she's like, I need to use your phone, and I'm just like, oh fucking kiss her right now, god damn it. Fuck. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna remake this and make them lesbians and actually make this an erotic thriller adaptation.
Oh, that's a movie I would watch.
Erotic thriller of Copycat.
Oh, right. They also talk about vibrators in it. Did you catch that?
Yes.
That was a funny one-liner. He says something about like the only thing these women have in common is they all have a vibrator. Talking about the victims, I think. And
she was like, yeah.
Yeah, Holly Hunter says something funny.
She says a line, and I wish I wrote it down. I don't remember exactly what it was.
But it was very much like Yasso, or like...
It's a tool for survival. It's a tool for survival.
It's a tool for survival.
Get it, girl?
But like... There's a lot of like these comic moments, but also some really terrifying moments, especially when Sigourney Weaver's being stalked. Mm-hmm. Like... Those scenes are like incredibly unnerving when she like can't leave her apartment and like the killer finds ways to get like details away from her, or like the worst one to me was the ants in her bed, because something about ants just like awful. And then it is the reveal of the book with the finger as the bookmark. With the
finger and the bookmark.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Oh, God.
That would be horrifying.
And it's just like ants, for some reason, are just like, it's this creepy, crawly, and they're giant ants in her bed. And it's just
invasive.
Like... Yes, and there's just like, there's something so unnerving about how her character specifically is fucked with this whole movie.
Yes.
Like, she can't leave her house. Like, he is just fucking with... It's like a rat in a cage, and he's just fucking with her. And, like, that is so creepy and disturbing to me. Like, in a way that you don't see with men, like, male characters in these kinds of movies. You don't see them getting fucked with like this. So there's some, like, really interesting, like, gendered power dynamics going on here that are getting exploited in a particularly interesting way.
Yeah, that's what really stuck with me, too, with this movie is... and that I love in a good scary movie is that it's not necessarily, I don't think there's any kind of a actual jump scare or like a bang moment in this movie, but the sense of dread of the threat that she's under constantly, even in her own home, is so unnerving. And that palatial apartment, I love that apartment.
Oh, that apartment. Like, if you're going to be housebound, that is the place to do it.
Right?
In. Like, that place with the blinds that are on a remote control and everything. I'm like,
an open two-story. Yeah, that movie would not work if Miss Thing were living in a one-bedroom.
No,
absolutely not. It would start and end real quickly.
Yeah.
But I do love that this movie does have those moments of pure horror, because I did find that whole sequence where she realizes that someone is creeping around in her house, and you see him up on like the balcony, like the kind of shrouded figure moving. Like, there are some moments of tension in here that I think work really well for a movie that I think leans more on the police procedural and like the aftermath than like actually building horror scenes. But there are a few moments, and that one in particular stood out to me on this watch, of being like, ooh, this is actually kind of creepy because she's stuck here. She can't go anywhere. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like an old school woman stuck in a house, like maybe Wait Until Dark, or like that kind of aspect of like Hitchcockian cinema, of that climax moment where you realize someone is there and you're stuck in this place. Like, that's what it kind of was giving me, honestly.
Yeah, and it does a good job of sprinkling it throughout them, because it's a 2-hour movie. I didn't get bored. I usually get very fancy in 2-hour movies. And I thought they did an awesome job of that. And then the bang up finale, there's 2 like holy shit moments where I remember the first time I saw, I was like, he's in the closet. You know, she's like hanging from the pipe. She can't talk to what's her name. And then when he sat up, genius.
It gave me like Saw vibes, like the moment when like the head turns and he's like, nope, I'm alive. Like it was creepy
and totally unexpected when she does the unexpected and starts to hang herself, kicks her feet off the toilet.
So smart.
Yep.
Brilliant.
So smart.
Wasn't it like not to ruin his perfect crime scene and like ruin this pattern?
Yeah, she was ruining his like. Oh, that's another thing. What is that song that they play that murder isn't art? Or remember they get the letter and it goes to like an 80s or 90s.
Yes.
You can turn a murder into art is one of the lyrics. I hope.
What fucking song was that?
What a weird song. First of all, like what?
Yeah, that was really. I mean,
this whole movie, Murder by Numbers.
The whole movie is just so bizarre, but I think that's why I love it. I think it takes all the things you expect from like 90s police procedurals and makes them just a little bit weirder and puts them in like a slightly different context, and I love that. I think it just makes it feel a little bit more different than a lot of those movies. And again, because like you have 2 women being weird bad bitches who are lonely and sad.
When she calls him a little twerp.
Oh yeah.
That is like a burn.
Bang, bang, boom.
Gotcha.
And then
you're just a sad, second-rate, boring, impotent copycat.
Yes.
Like, cut him down.
She also says,
I mean, is she wrong?
Here, she says, when she's like trying to lure him, she says, here, kitty, 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 like under her breath.
Yes.
Yes.
That's her same line from Alien.
Yep.
When she's actually looking for her cat, but like the alien pops out. There was a lot of those little like treats in here that I didn't realize.
That's so cool.
I didn't either until just now.
Wow.
Oh.
What a good movie. I'll say it. What a good movie.
I'm happy to have introduced you to it, Mary Beth.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, okay, so on that note, should we wrap up and give this our rating out of 5?
That sounds good.
I've had a great time, Terry, I think so.
Terry, you're first. How many bookmark fingers out of 5 do you give Copycat?
That moment still works, I think. And that when there's a close-up on the finger, it's gross looking. It's
a gross finger.
It doesn't look fake. Although, I will say what does look fake is go back, watch the opening scene, and when Harry Connick Jr. has like the gun and the knife, they both, and there's a close-up on them, they both look, okay, that is a stage gun. That is not a real gun.
No, really?
The knife looks like a fucking Spirit Halloween knife. It looks so
fake blood squirts out of it.
Tinfoily and like, and the gun literally looked like a candle. Like it looks like, like did you forget to replace the prop gun with?
It was so fun. I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, okay. But anyway.
It was kind of like when I first saw that watching, it's like, oh, is this not going to be as good as I remember? When you get to that point. Well, luckily, it is better than the little snippets that I remembered as a little kid. Especially after this conversation, I realized how much more I enjoyed this movie than I thought I did while watching. I was like, yeah, this feels like a 90s thriller. But then having this conversation and realizing kind of the smart things that it was doing at a time that was like, fraught with a lot of like 90s kind of cop thrillers. Like this was a bit ubiquitous, and so the fact that this movie is doing something a little bit off the beaten path, I thought was really smart idea for it. So, we didn't even talk about the score. Christopher Young, who has provided so many scores of some movies that we have actually covered on this podcast before. Because like he's also kind of ubiquitous with that sort of like horror of that time period. I'm looking back at the things that he made with like he did Nightmare on Elm Street 2. He also did Flowers in the Attic. He did Hellraiser, Invaders from Mars, The Fly 2, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. Like, a lot of Tales from the Hood, he was a composer for that. The Dark Half. Like, just a lot of these movies that were, for me, like, you just go to the movie store and you get them off, and he probably made a movie or the score for it. So I don't know, this movie was fun. I had a great time watching it, a lot better than I remembered it being, and a lot better than I was expecting it to be on a rewatch. I was like, how good is this gonna be? So I'm gonna give it 4. We're gonna cut off 4 fingers and stuff them in a book for me. What about you, Mary Beth?
I'm giving it the same. I was so excited to watch this. I was hooked immediately, from the cold open all the way to the climax. I think that it is so ahead of its time in a lot of ways and not in others. But, I guess we can only ask so much of a 1995 police procedural. But, I mean, Sigourney Weaver and Holly Hunter are fucking incredible in this movie. Plus a himbo, Dermot Mulroney. And just like a good, compelling, creepy story. It's good, folks. We should talk about this movie more. The Dutch, you have the final word. How many bookmark fingers out of 5?
So how do these fingers work? Is this how many fingers I would cut off for the movie? Or if I'm giving it 4 fingers, I'm giving it 4 out of 10? Like 4
out of 5. Yeah.
Oh,
so it's
4
like
out
a
of 5.
Star. Think of it. Yeah, 4 out of 5. Think of them like stars, but fingers.
I would have to say 4 as well. Yeah, I would. It's one of the only 2-hour-long movies that does not make me squirm and want to like start checking my phone.
Yeah.
It's a good thrill ride. It even, like Terry was saying, the score is so much fun to listen to because it also, that's another thing with these 90s movies. They have like epic soundtracks with like singles and songs pumped in there.
Yes.
I mean, there's some weird ones in this one. I missed that. It's so, isn't it great?
It is.
So yeah, I would have to say I would cut off 4 fingers and half of my thumb.
There you go.
Yeah.
Also, I'm curious, rewatching this as an adult, and did it bring you back to when you first saw it as a kid?
Oh yeah. I even remembered. So after I watched it the first time, I would get in bed and have this like huge fear that like hands were coming up, like someone was going to grab me, like a person, because you know how he's just like in her apartment all the time. It definitely took me back to like, might have a little PTSD here from this. In a great way. I loved it.
In a great way. Well, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Copycat. Where can the listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you can share?
So you can find me on all the socials. I'm on Instagram at DutchMDM. I'm on Twitter at Dutch Marich, Marich, and Facebook. There's a page for the Horror in the High Desert movies. It's called Horror in the High Desert Movie Series. Coming up, I am finishing the rest of the series. So there's parts 3, 4, and 5. And after that, well, this might actually come out somewhere in the middle of that. I am working on my first horror comedy that is about gay hillbillies. And it is called Queerbillies. And you heard it here first, ladies and gents.
I want this in my eyes.
That's going to be a blast, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Is it going to be found footage, or is it going to be traditional, or what?
Have you seen Trailer Park Boys?
No, I haven't.
Very found footage.
Okay.
If you haven't seen Trailer Park Boys, I'm guessing Mary Beth has seen it. Yeah.
Yes. It's
pretty much a documentary crew following around this like ordeal happening in this small town with some gays and their arch nemesis.
This sounds great.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Full on, complete so with like explosions, lighting each other's houses on fire, like total mayhem.
Hell yes. That sounds great.
Okay, well, on that incredible note, listeners, you have heard from us. We want to hear from you. Have you seen Copycat? Do you also think it is a masterpiece? You can let us know via email by sending us an email. That's redundant. At scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want to help support us, we are on Patreon, where we're giving out exclusive content.
Woo! Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.